Welcome back, dear viewers, to the Berlin Time channel. My name is Andre. I apologize for the 1 week upload delay. I was a bit busy with my new roommate, but we'll just jump right into these two beauties. We'll check the time. It is 6:22 here in Berlin, and with that, we'll just start the video. Now, these two watches, I laid in front of my mother when she had her birthday, and I was like, "Mom, choose a watch. I'll fix it for you. You won't have to, wear any quartz trash anymore." And yeah, these two watches are Seiko 2406s, produced in the 70s, 80s. And yeah, the right one here has a dark blue dial, the left one has a silver sunburst dial, and both don't run. And she chose the silver one, so we can just throw the dark blue one away. Let's check the setting system here. The date works nicely. The day is a bit clunky, but we'll get that working, don't worry. And let's just check the hands here as well. Pull out the crown. Let's move the hands. Oh, looks like the watch is a runner. It's a bit weird because I bought this broken and it didn't work for the last couple of weeks, but I guess I just have that magic touch. Now we have the signature back here, Seiko 4206, and there's a bit of gunk down here. Well, I think I'll give this case a makeover. Now, this 4206 caliber, I think was one of the last female calibers which Seiko produced and developed in-house. So I'm very curious to see what ingenious ways they use to, compress a watch movement. And we can have a look inside by lifting the back here. Okay, it's absolutely tiny, and surprisingly, there's a wing balance here, which is the first one I've ever seen. So that's a first. And the case back shows that this was serviced in 2002, so almost 20 years ago. That's kind of crazy. What I found out while looking at both these watches is that while both are from the same caliber, one is a 4206A, while the other one is a 4206B, and that can be seen when we look at the balance here. The right one is a 4206B, and it has a one wing balance, and so it's only supported by one, while the other one has a uniform balance, so it's like an overarching balance. It gives it a very, very high, pleasing aesthetic. Now, it does have a manual winding setting in the neutral position, which works pretty nicely. And yeah, I don't see any corrosion here. We can start by removing the crown and the stem. And, the fact that there's no corrosion, no rust, just means that the movement is in a very good condition and it will probably be very easy to work with. Now we can flip the watch to remove the case, put it on a cushion and just pull it off. Lovely. There is no crystal here, so we'll have to buy that as well. And let's take the movement spacer off here. And this is a big mistake I made. I could have bent one of the hands, and luckily I didn't, but I do not condone my behavior. Let's remove the hands so they don't get damaged any further by me with the hand remover, the seconds hand, the minute hand, and the hour hand at last. Now the loom does look a bit beat up, but I don't think my mom really puts a lot of emphasis on loom, so I'll just keep that. And my re-looming skills aren't too good. Now we can remove the dial, but for that we need to unhook the dial feet. And Seiko has the system here where you just have to loosen this little lever, press it, there we go, that's one. And the second one is right to the balance. We have to watch out not to slip and damage the balance here. And another time, there we go. And once that is done, we should take the movement and pry it up. There we go. That's the one foot, and the second foot is here. And with that, the dial can be taken off carefully. There we go. And let's just put that away for safekeeping. And the dial spacer ring as well. Taking a closer look at the dial, you can really see the beautiful sunburst movement. The condition is nice. There is a slight stain around like the automatic text. I'm not sure why, but otherwise it's in good condition, so I won't do any touching up there. Now this movement is running again, it can't really decide what it wants to do. And with that, we can start disassembling the watch. I'll just use this cutter movement. Don't worry, I won't stab the movement, but I'll use it to pry up this day ring holder. I use it as a little hack because the blade is so thin, it just slips nicely under the metal without damaging anything, so I definitely recommend it. We can just lift that up and start working on removing other parts of the front side here. For example, the date ring. Carefully lift that up and put that into our sorting box. Now we can strap it into the movement holder and on the tightest setting because it is absolutely tiny. I was skeptical if it will work at all, but it did. Now we have the cannon pinion in the middle, and around here we have the date wheel, of course, and that is, I think, the spring for the day wheel. So it moves the wheel, and up there we have the day wheel, I guess, which turns every 24 hours to change the day, like this. And we can start by unscrewing the spring plate here, take off the screw, and for some reason it's been very unstable when I press down, so I think it's the automatic nodule, so I'll just flip it over and take that off, just to make sure that if I press down and slip, I don't I'll just minimize the risk of slipping. So we can just take the screw off here carefully, and the rotor, and it is one less part we'll have to take off later, so win-win. Now that's much better, and we can just turn the screw out of the plate, remove it, and take off this little spring plate here. Perfect. Now we can take off the day wheel, or better yet, we can just take off the screw and take that out of there. Perfect. And remove the screws for the cover plate, so we can take that off in a second. That's a bit, why, there we go. Perfect. Now this is also a pretty interesting part. I don't know what this is yet, but I think it's part of the date system. But yeah, we'll just see later. Take off the day wheel, and we can finally take off the cover plate and the date wheel as well. Let's turn, I think there's something in the back. Let's turn it. Focus. Focus, focus. And that's the that's the translation wheel and a really greased up part of the setting system, I guess. Yeah, take off the hour wheel and the bottom part of the day wheel. This little lever for the date wheel and the spring of the date wheel. So this is what moves it around when we set it. Now we can take off the screw for this cover plate, which holds the clutch in place. Let's just leverage it up carefully here. Perfect, nice. And take that off into our sorting box. Now we can release the yoke just carefully. There we go. There was some tension there. Take that off as well. And now we can remove the first clutch wheel, which does the winding, and the second clutch wheel, which does the setting and everything else. And finally, of course, the translation wheel here. Now comes the cannon pinion. Let's pry that up with our tweezer, and the last little lever in the bottom right there we can take off later. And now we can flip the movement. We've disassembled the front side and come to the back. I'm taking off the automatic module here. You technically don't have to, but for a full cleaning you do. So I'm taking that off, unscrewing it and lifting it to reveal the the winding system here with a jeweled center. Very interesting. And to hinder any further damages or potential damages, I'm just taking off the balance wheel as a precaution here. Let's pry that up and it will stop working. Rip. Oh, it's still swinging a bit, but it'll work later. Don't worry, little friend, you'll come back to life. Now comes the pallet system. Let's unscrew the pallet fork cover. Oh, just missed that a bit there. Perfect. Take that off. Oh, damn, that just flew out. So be careful there. Oh, and there was some power stored up. Yeah, that wasn't really good. I could have damaged both, but this is the cover plate, which I found on my table. The pallet fork. Jewels are in place, so I guess I got lucky. Yeah, they usually maybe like break off and miss a line, but it all looked fine. Okay, let's take this away and make sure that they don't fly off like before. Now, I was trying to take off the, what is this? The winding wheel here, but for some reason it didn't work. I'm not sure why. I guess it was just maybe greased up or just too tightly closed, so I just gave up and moved to the main cover plate, taking off the 3 screws, and the third screw had a little cover spring for the 3-second pinion, I guess. And I found the screw there, and we can take this off to reveal the beautiful inside of the watch. And damn, I must say, I've never seen something like this. It's pretty cool. The wheels have like holes in them. I think they actually number the wheel. So that's the 4th wheel, the 5th wheel, and down to the 6th wheel. We can start by removing this little main barrel spring here. Take off the barrel as well, and the fourth wheel, the fifth wheel down there, and this is part of the setting system, little translation wheel. And to take that little module out, we'll have to loosen or remove the screw down there, take that off, and take this little spring out as well, which was in its way, and take off the second screw on the other side. There we go. And now we can remove the whole module. It's a bit difficult. Pry it up, and off it goes. Now we can take off the loop-in second pinion in the middle here from the jewel bearing, and unscrew this little last cover plate for the sixth wheel. Take off both screws and lift that off. Perfect. Now take out the escape wheel and the last sixth wheel here in the middle. Let's carefully take it out from the bearing. Now we have disassembled the whole watch. Perfect. And we can take this main plate out and start our little cleaning process. Now, my cleaning method is still the hand washing method in lighter fluid to, release and liquidate all the pent up oils and greases, and then a quick rinse in isopropyl alcohol. You can see me doing them in batches there on the right. Every little section of my sorting box gets put through the cleaning process, and I've been thinking about expanding into an ultrasonic cleaner, but there's so much stuff there, I don't know what cleaning fluids to take and everything. So I think I'm just sticking to the hand washing method. I mean, I just won't change something that's working. And yeah, sometimes I'm insecure that, I'm not doing anything, but I mean, it is getting clean, so I guess I am doing something. All right, so after this cleaning process, I looked at the barrel, the winding barrel, and you can see the winding wheel and the barrel have some grease in there, so we'll have to clean that off. And I pried open the mainspring barrel here in the middle. There's a little slit. We can just use our nails or some tool to pry it up. The spring looked in good condition, so I removed the arbor carefully here with my tweezer. Just make sure not to kink or damage the mainspring. Perfect, there we go. Now we can take that off and put that into the cleaning fluid. And I took out the mainspring to service it. I did not have a mainspring on hand, so I just took it out. And how you do it is you take out the first coils and then let it do the work for you as you wind it along your thumbs. There we go. I'm speeding up a bit for you to see. And after a while you come to the barrel that has the most power, so be careful there so it doesn't spring out. But after that, you're basically done. Now I came to servicing the mainspring. As I said, there it is on the floor, and you can see it is absolutely disgusting. There's so much grease, oil, dirt, whatever, and this definitely needed a cleaning. So I slapped on a pair of latex gloves, and this is the stage where you have to start being clean with your watch parts. So I just put them on and clean the mainspring. Same process as with the parts. I soaked paper with some lighter fluid and cleaned the mainspring length. You can see how much dirt came off, and after that I soaked rinsed off with some isopropanol on the other side there. And then I just put in the barrel parts into the lighter fluid to marinate it and loosen up the oils and grease. And I lubed up the mainspring as well with Mobius A200, smeared it on some paper, and the same process, just covered the cleaned mainspring with this to lubricate the whole length as well. Now I added some finishing touches for those spaces where I couldn't get with the paper. I just did that with the oiler here, the corners, the edges, just to make sure that everything's nice and lubed up. And for the barrel lubrication, I used 8217, which is a braking grease for automatic mainsprings. This is an automatic movement, just slap some on the side, and we can start reassembling the mainspring again. This is basically just wind the spring in the other way around as you wound it out. Just have to be careful not to do it the other way. You can see me adjusting and checking the angle here, because if you put it in the wrong way, you just completely ruin the mainspring, and you need a new mainspring. So I luckily got it right the first time, and yeah, put that in completely there. It's a lot of repetitive work, but it worked out in the end. No, it worked, and this is the final product. It looks nice and shiny, clean, lovely, and you can see it's all nice. There's no malformities in the spring, which means that it should perform well, even though it's a bit older. Now I lubricated the arbor as well with some HP 1300 and placed that back into the mainspring. There we go. Pry it in. And now we can place the barrel lid on top of there and press it down. No, I think I'll have to do it with my hands. There we go. And that is the final product. So what you see me doing here is you could technically test out if the mainspring is working by putting the winding wheel on top of it and turning it into the opposite direction, and if there's tension it works, and it did. So I did everything correctly. Now we can start looking at the shock jewel on the main plate and the balance wheel. And here I'm removing the jewel cover. You really have to be careful that you have this, otherwise they fly off. And then I removed the jewel bearing with some Rodico, and I flipped the movement and did the same thing on the back. And basically what these shock jewels do is they firstly, provide some shock protection against any like blunt force, and secondly they allow the balance to work at a optimum. So if it's lubricated correctly and everything's fine, it'll just help it. Now we can wash the main plate and the balance wheel. Let's drop it into the jar with lighter fluid. Now once the main plate and the balance wheel are clean, we can reinsert the cleaned jewel system. So we have the jewel bearing here, and we can oil it a bit. I spilled some Mobius 9010 on top there, so let's just get that away and cleaned up. And afterwards we can put on the jewel cap and the jewel cover. This is a bit tricky always because they tend to fly away, but I managed to do it on the back side here. And now we can flip through the balance and do the same. Put in the jewel bearing, then insert the oiling. And you could technically oil this the other way around. So put oil on the jewel cap and then put the bearing on. That is the correct way to do it, but I'm not proficient at it, so I'm just doing the other way around. So yeah, put on the jewel cover, and you can see that the balance moves way smoother now. Coming to the watch case, I did say that there was some gunk on the side, so I'm cleaning that up with some soapy water. And on the other side as well, just make sure to really get in there. And I can also clean the inside of the watch case. And for more, robust dirt, I can just use some beater tweezers to just scratch that out there. The back just looked really decent, no big cleaning needed here. And since I'm at it, I also decided to polish the case, so put on my Dremel and use some polishing paste to polish this steel up a bit here, the back side, so it's nice and shiny, as well as the front side, so get those nice curves shiny up again, especially the sides here, this side as well, and the other wing of the case as well here. And in total, it does look way shinier. I think it is a small upgrade. I'm not really good at this yet. I don't know everything about it, but I'm trying my best. Now we have finished doing everything really, and we can start reassembling the movement. And I'm starting right here with re-oiling the center jewel in the main plate with some HP 1300. This is where the 6th wheel comes in right here. And we can just turn it a bit just to make sure that the oil gets transferred a bit. And we can place the escapement wheel right next to it. Then we can place down the cover plate, and this is a pretty ingenious design. It presses down on the 6th wheel now when we screw it down, and it holds the escapement in place, which is very cool. I mean, it's a very efficient Japanese design, so shout out to the people at Seiko in the 70s. And now we can just make sure it turns nicely. It does. And we can place down this interesting setting system we took out before. We'll place down the module. Now we can put the first screw in. Make sure that it's nice and tight, and then before we put the second screw in, we should not forget this little spring thing, which we place down and put the screw through before tightening that down. Now we can oil the bearing of the mainspring barrel. You don't have to do this, it's just my preference, but then make sure everything turns. Put the winding wheel on there. I smudged it down with my finger, and put the ratchet in just to make sure that no power will unwind when we are wearing the watch. Then we can let the sweeping second hand pinion slide through the 6th wheel, through the bearing, make sure it's nice and snugly fit. And we can start reassembling the gear train. This is the 5th wheel here. It's a bit tricky to let it find its place in the jewel, but I think that should be it. And then the fourth wheel that is right between those two, nice and tight. And then we can put some grease there in the settings module and put down the translation wheel. That is done there. And then we can put on the main cover plate, let it fall on the movement, get all the pinions aligned of the gear train, and make sure that nothing is misaligned before tightening the main plate. Otherwise, you'll break them off, and that is a catastrophe. So put these two screws down there and tighten them. And before we forget, the third screw needs this little spring cover for the second pinion. So place that down there and make sure the hole is aligned for the screw to pass into the main plate, like so. And screw that down to completely tighten the main plate to the cover, or other way around. Now before we test, we can lubricate the pinions. So put some Mobius 9010 onto the jewel caps here from the front, and one here on the mainspring, and flip the movement and do it in the back. Just make sure not to hit the escapement wheel jewel, because that does not need any lubrication of any sort unless you have a very special oil. So just be careful there. And as you can see, it moves smoothly. Every wheel is turning, the escapement is turning. Looks like we did a good job. And now we can turn the movement to work on the front side before installing the pallet fork system and the escapement wheel. Now, at the front, we start by inserting this little pin, and this pin is where the clutch lever will be sitting on, or the stem lever, better yet. And this basically hinders the stem from falling out. Now we can put in the second clutch for the setting, the first clutch for the winding, and let's test the whole system out. Looks nice and sturdy. And we can lubricate it with Molykote DX. Let's get a tad bit here and smack that onto the friction contact points where the metal will be on metal. And following up, we can insert the yoke again. Make sure that the spring part goes in this little hole up there, and the teeth of the clutch lever align with the front part of the yoke. And this gives the watch, its different positions. So first position, second position, neutral position, and lubricate that part as well. Now we can cover it up with the setting system subcover plate, which also separates the two clutches from each other, and screw that bad boy down and test the system as a whole. So the springs work, these different positions work, and the winding works as well. So the system looks all good. Now we can lubricate the other friction points here, the hour wheel, the translation wheel pin, and some of the teeth there. Then we can press down the cannon pinion in the center and place down the translation wheel to the cannon pinion. See if everything is connected, everything turns, looks good. Then we can put down the day wheel, the bottom of the day wheel, and the translation wheel to the day wheel, and connect both parts with the final hour wheel of the front part. And testing this, it seems like everything is moving and turning, so looks like everything is aligned correctly. Now we can continue by adding the date wheel spring into its little cove here in the corner. Make sure it's aligned and make sure that the spring end is left of this little screw hole, and attach the date lever to its pin. And this is what hooks into the date wheel teeth and moves it along with the spring. Now attach the second part of the day wheel system, and this is what hooks into this yoke part, which I showed before at the disassembly. We can reattach the date wheel into the lever, make sure it's hooked up, and cover it up with the cover plate. And this is where the yoke part has to align with the little setting system we just installed there. Make sure it's aligned and screw that down with some screws, and we can see if it works. Yep, see that little bend there, that is moving nicely. Okay, now we can move on to the 24-hour day wheel, which turns every 24 hours and turns the day wheel. Screw that bad boy down, and now attach the little cover spring for the day wheel, which stops from the day wheel from turning back as it changes day. Put the two screws in and screw those down, And finally, we can add the day wheel. I'm using my fingers here to make sure that the spring and the wheel are aligned nicely, and make sure to add the little ring down so that it's all pressed together tightly. Now the date works nicely, the day works nicely, looks like both systems are great, and we can start looking at the back of the movement again. Now to resuscitate the watch, we need to reinstall the pallet fork here. Let's cover it up with the pallet fork bridge, make sure that the pinions align and it doesn't break off. Let's screw this down. 1, 2, and tighten. Abracadabra. And now we can finally put back in the heart of the watch, the balance wheel. Make sure that the impulse jewel aligns with the pallet fork there, and press that down carefully, not to bend or nick any spring here. And let's spin that. Oh, there we go. The watch is back alive, back from the damned. And yeah, looks like it's nice. We can now tighten this down with the 2 screws on both sides of this unilateral wing. 1 and 2. And yeah, once that is done, we're almost done. The only thing which is missing is this automatic winding system, so make sure that the teeth here are aligned with the winding wheel. And now we can screw this module down as well. 1, 2, and 3. And tighten this. And as a final piece, we can add the rotor to this bearing, and as you can see, the winding wheel is turning below there in a bi-directional manner as well, so that's working out great. Bring in the rotor, make sure that the bearing there is attached correctly, and insert the screw. Tighten the screw, and with that, we should be completely finished. Now, as you can see, the rotor moves smoothly as well. It's not scratching on the movement, and the winding wheel is also working. Here you can see the watch again ticking. And yeah, we can reattach the dial spacer. Make sure that the holes with the dial spacer are aligned with the dial feet holes on the movement. Otherwise, it will be a bit tricky when you try to reattach the dial. Once that's done, you can bring in the dial again and make sure that the feet align with the holes in the dial spacer and the movement. And you can press it down carefully. There we go, that's about right. And flip it, and now you can tighten the levers again for the dial feet as we did at the start. So just press it in there, careful with the balance, and press it in on the other side as well. This is a bit tricky because of the angle and my fat finger, you can't see anything, but you can see it switching to the other side. Nice. Now reattach the hands. The hour hand is first. Make sure it's aligned with the hour correctly, and press it down with the hand attacher. And the minute hand, make sure that this is also aligned correctly. I'll adjust this in a second. There we go, adjust it to the center of the hour, otherwise when the hour switches to a full new hour, it won't be shown as such. Nice, there we go. And finally the seconds hand, and let's see if it starts ticking. There we go, the seconds hand is ticking very productively as well. And now we can come to the crystal, which was missing. This is the case, and this is the acrylic crystal I bought instead. I actually bought a mineral crystal but it just didn't work out, so I'm going with this acrylic one. This one I just pressed in with my fingers and hands. It might smudge the acrylic a bit, but I can just clean that off in the end. It's a bit domed, and yeah, that's about it. Now we can use this to reassemble the watch. So drop the watch into the assembled case again. Make sure that nothing gets damaged here. Let's use the rotor to correctly position it in the case. Reattach the stem here on the side. Make sure that it is fully inside and also working. So let's see if the winding works. Yep, the winding works as well. Perfect. And now we can demagnetize this pretty little thing before we slap it onto the Timegrapher. So this side and the other side as well. Give it a good long demagnification. And let's snap it into the bracket here. Switch on the Timegrapher. And let's see what the measurements say. Absolutely horrible. It doesn't really recognize the pattern. So what I first did is I tried to look at the rate by my eye. So I just timed how long 1 minute was on my phone versus how long it was on the watch. But just by looking at the seconds hand, obviously, you know, think you could understand the flaw in this examination method. But I got a replacement part in the end, and after regulation, this is what it looked like, you know, plus 2 seconds, an amp of 225 and 0.4 seconds, microseconds of beat error. Seems pretty decent, you know. I was more better than I hoped for, to be honest. And yeah, let's take it out and let's close the watch by screwing down the case back again here, and let's just tighten it with my hand just to be sure. And yeah, that's basically the watch. And so for testing purposes, I wasn't very you know, very confident in how good it would perform the arm. I just bought a, you know, silicone wristband for this tiny lug size before giving to my mum, and this is the second side, and now we can just attach it to my wrist. And I just decided to wear it for I think a week or two before giving it over. I was already a few weeks overdue, and she was angry, but she forgave me in the end. And yeah, that's it basically. This is on my wrist, and you know, enjoy the B-roll footage. This is the sheer size of the watch movement. This is my pinky finger. It's absolutely tiny. Now we're at the end of the video of me cleaning up the crime scene of my table. I hope you guys enjoyed, you know, watching the video. Any questions, comments, criticisms, smack them down below. It was a bit frustrating getting back into the flow of editing and doing the voiceover, but I managed in the end. And yeah, I'm looking forward to producing, you know, more videos, not with delay, in the coming months. So watch out for those, and see you next time. Watch bangers.